Alright, so Jackson basically handpicked Martin Van Buren, his vice president during Jackson's second term, to be the next president. So when Van Buren won with a tiny margin against his Whig opponent, he was actually greeted with an unwelcomed Panic of 1837. Basically, Jackson's bad financial policy resulted in huge troubles for Van Buren, and he had to deal with the Panic of 1837. And basically, anytime when you hear panic in American history, it just means it was an economic depression. So during Van Buren's term, Congress passed the Gag Resolution of 1836, which basically tabled any and all debates about slavery. And after 8 years, the Gag Resolution was discontinued. The next president to win was from the Whig Party. The winning ticket had William H. Harrison and as the president, and John Tyler as vice president. Now, Tyler wasn't really a strong supporter of the Whig Party, but the Whigs only picked him to be the vice president to increase Southern support. Unfortunately for the Whig Party, Harrison died while he was in office, so naturally Tyler had to become president, and Harrison was actually the first president to die in office. And that's pretty much it for politics during this period. Next, I am definitely going to talk about culture, because there is a lot of culture on the AP exam as well, and there was a lot of cultural progress. Basically, the arts thrived between the War of 1812 and the Civil War. Naturalist writers wrote about the individual's constant fight against society and the environment. Examples of naturalist works are Moby Dick by Herman Melville and The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne. In contrast to naturalists, there were transcendentalist writers who wrote about how God created people as tabula rasa, or a blank slate, and they basically believed that people were without evil and without the capacity to be perfect, with the capacity to be perfect. And some famous examples of transcendentalist works are Walden by Henry David Thoreau and Nature by Ralph Waldo Emerson. Also during this time, the Second Great Awakening occurred in the first half of the 1800s. Religious leaders thought people had to purge sin from their lives and seek salvation themselves rather than depend on the church. Also, the Mormons settled in Utah in the 1840s to escape persecution for their beliefs. Additionally, social living experiments became popular during this time. Utopias are basically social living experiments where everything is perfect. Brook Farm and the Oneida community are examples of the two most famous social living experiments, and you definitely need to know about them. Brook Farm and Oneida community, they're the examples of utopias, basically. And while some try to find perfection in social living experiments, others thought it would be more beneficial to reform the society they currently lived in. And the average social reformer in the first half of the 1800s was a middle-class woman. Females actually made a lot of progress, culturally speaking, in the first half of the 1800s. Horace Mann fought for universal public education of school-aged kids. Dorothea Dix fought to improve the conditions of insane asylums and prisons. Also, women were really involved in the temperance movement to ban alcohol, which started in the 1820s and resulted in the 18th Amendment. The 18th Amendment included the Volstead Act, which banned alcohol, and later on, the 21st Amendment actually repealed the 18th Amendment because people just couldn't live without alcohol. Since women were so active and successful in achieving all these reforms, they decided to focus on themselves as well by attempting to extend suffrage, and suffrage just means voting rights. So women wanted voting rights during this time. Women's suffrage started this early in the first half of the 1800s, but it wasn't really achieved until the 1920s, and I'll talk about that more when we get to the Roaring Twenties. The abolitionist movement was the most important and most impactful movement. Abolitionists were dedicated on banning slavery from America. William Lloyd Garrison wrote articles in The Liberator urging for immediate liberation of all slaves. Frederick Douglass was a supporter of William Lloyd Garrison, and both Garrison and Douglass were members of the Radical American Anti-Slavery Society. Although people like Garrison and Douglass wanted slaves to be free and remain in America, other abolitionists supported a plan called Back to Africa, where they wanted to put all the slaves in America in a colony called Liberia. And that pretty much concludes our culture for the first half of the 1800s. And basically the second half of the 1800s consists of the Civil War and Reconstruction, and that's my next video.